Employers, when asking is there anything you would like to ask us in an interview, what has been the best response? Young grad straight out of uni, getting into her first proper job. What do you like most about working here? It was also cool how my colleague and I had completely different answers. We hired her. Spoiler alert, they always respond with the people. Anything about the company or position. You need to show genuine interest in that you prepared for the interview. Writing down a few things you're unsure they'll go over ahead of time is always a good move. A hugely important condition of this though is do not ask basic questions about the company. Research it online to know what it does. If you walk into my interview and ask what do you guys do, you'll be walking out of my interview soon thereafter. Normally ask who their longest serving employee is. Gives you an indication on their turnover and if people enjoy staying with the company. Also ask the interviewer what role they started off as in the company. It tells you if there is progression and opportunities. There are people who work where I work who have been there 40 years. I like to call in about once per week because I don't feel like working. How strict are your attendance policies? Best from the context of demonstrating qualities that you'd like to hire. No. Best from the context of avoiding a train wreck. Absolutely. I'm not an employer, but I strongly feel that this is the one question in an interview where you shouldn't just try to tell the interviewer what you think they want to hear. You need to interview the company as much as they need to interview you to find out if it's a good match. Good employers will be perfectly fine with this because they want happy and productive employees who want to work there. So if being forced to work lots of overtime is a complete non-starter for you, ask them about their work-life balance policies. If you're going for a desk job and you hate working in a cubicle, ask what their work environment looks like. I like to ask what my typical work day would look like. Knowing that there is a established routine shows me if the company is scattered or not. I'd argue no routine can be better. I do heavy field work, but during my limited office time the most direction I get as far as routine goes is what on my list is top priority. Nobody gives a crap about what my work day entails as long as I get things done by the time I say I will. It's awesome. Could you describe an average workday for this position? I do lots of interviewing and I want people to ask us about what we do. It might not be what they expect and I want them to be as informed as possible. Likeable interviewee. Was comfortable and almost but not quite a fit from the experience perspective. He would be working with a broad team where good attitude was important. By the end of the interview it was clear to all of us that he didn't have everything we wanted, but he seemed the right sort of person. So we wrapped up things with the any questions prompt. The guy smiled and gently said, "When do I start?" Pulled it off perfectly. And it cemented the fact that he had the attitude and social skills we wanted, and those got him the job. He developed his other missing skills pretty quickly to fill in the gaps, and we never regretted hiring him. I ask this for every job interview I've ever had, and I've never once not gotten hired after being interviewed. If you asked every employee here what their favorite and least favorite thing is about working here, what do you think the most common responses would be? I wish people I've interviewed would ask me that. It's one of my favorite questions to ask as a candidate. The answers are often illuminating. As a carpenter, I ask what their status is with their suppliers and subcontractors. I've even go as far as asking them for references. The last time I changed jobs, I wanted it to be my last job and the economy was really strong in my area. So there were a lot of people looking for lead carpenters and supervisors. I had multiple offers and in order to decide, called their subcontractors, roofers, drywallers, painters, and asked how they liked working with them. I asked them and their material suppliers if they paid their bills on time and if they worked with them consistently. I recommend anyone who is serious about a long-term job to do the same, especially if you aren't desperate for any job and are interviewing with multiple companies. And sometimes you can turn it around and make them feel like they are hoping you'll work for them instead of the other way around. Long-term job. I already sabotage myself in plenty of other ways, no need to add a new one. I'm not an employer, but these questions have received immediate positive feedback from interviewers when I ask, what's the most challenging part of being a new employee at company? If I were hired, what do my first months look like? In those first 6 months, what's the biggest thing I can do to make a positive impact at company? If hired, how can I help support your own professional growth? My boss loved this one. He basically started giving the "here are my expectations of you" speech you get when you're actually hired. Based on this conversation, is there anything that might make you hesitant to hire me that I might be able to clear up? Double quote. If nothing else, it can give you an impression on how keen the interviewer is. This is actually a good answer though. It shows that the interviewee wants the job, and they understand that certain things can unintentionally rub people the wrong way. Communication is key, and asking to clear up any misunderstandings shows a level of maturity beyond the stereotypical teenage burger flipper. I like asking the interviewers why they like working at the company. Gives them a chance to talk about themselves and also gives me some insight into what it's like to work at that company. During a recent interview for a different position with my current company, I asked 3 things of my own to the interviewers. What is the culture of the team this position would be for like? What sort of personality traits mesh well with those already in this position? What are the most common stumbling blocks or points of friction you see for new hires to this position? From our discussion, do you see any concerns, or else have any further clarifications I may be able to address before we finish for today? Not an employer, but someone who may have a job interview coming very soon. I currently work as an agency temp at my workplace. I've been working as a temp there for a year. This company does use a 3-month probation period to test workers. Workers on probation can be let go at any time for any reason, earn no benefits, and make full wage. I feel like I've earned the right to at least ask about the possibility of waiving my probation time due to the length of time I have already worked there under similar conditions to probation. Contract can be cancelled at a day's notice, no benefits, while I make minimum wage. Should I ask about possibly getting my probation period waived due to time already worked under similar conditions? If you've already worked for them for a year, rather than asking if you can avoid probation, just ask if time as a temp counts as time employed even some fraction, because this might matter for other things like benefits. After him reading my CV of a 14 years chef as a career and me answering all his questions, I then asked him what this business could do for me. He was taken back a little as no one had ever asked that. He then proceeded to tell me about all the benefits that come with the job. Staff meals, staff drinks, laundry washed, etc. I got the job. I have my septum pierced and a full sleeve tattoo. Both are always flipped up covered during interviews. I always make sure to tell them that I have both and ask what their policies are on it while making it clear both can be hidden, no problem. I always get a thank you for disclosing the information before starting at the job so they aren't surprised or caught off guard. They always seem to appreciate that I go out of my way to hide it for professional reasons but still share that information with them. I said, I expect this to be a long-term deal. How long have you all been here? And can I expect to move up within the company in a timely basis? There were about 4 people in the room and their mouths dropped. They've never had anyone ask questions like that before. I did get the job, and I'm still here. I guess for this I expect something that demonstrates you're actually engaged and that you couldn't have found out in 5 minutes on the internet before coming in. My interviews tend to be very freeform. There are some stock questions I have to ask, but I dislike them as much as the interviewee dislikes answering them precisely because there's an expectation, or an expectation of an expectation, that one or both parties are trying to outmaneuver the other. I want to know if we'll be a good fit for each other. If you can't help us, or we can't provide an environment that you'll want to stick around in, I want to know that so we're not wasting both of our time. So I really prefer to go off script, and I ask a lot of questions where there isn't a correct answer. This question came up recently, so I'm copy-pasting my last reply. When interviewing with higher level folks or those who would actually be able to answer, I like to ask what challenges the business has faced in the past and currently. It tends to be something that gets the interviewer talking and you can learn more about the company and how these challenges are handled. If I am interviewing with the person who will be my direct manager, I ask them what their management style is. This is upper important for both of you. If you really can't deal with someone who is a micromanager and they hint at being one, I'm sure they won't come out and say but you can usually infer, then you might want to reconsider. Another question I like to ask my potential manager and co-workers is where they'd like to be in 5 years. It's good to know where in their career your manager is and how they see their role developing as well. I have found that you can spot a micromanager from the way they tell you how much they hate micromanaging and are no such person. He asked were there any questions that I didn't answer fully or you wanted me to elaborate upon further. As a matter of fact, there were a couple I wanted to revisit. Definitely not the best, but it stuck with me. We interviewed this guy who just wasn't very good. He did everything technically right, but it was just clear he didn't really know the subject matter. At the end, we ask him that question and he says, "Yeah, how'd I do?" and we didn't know how to respond. And he clarified, "How did this go?" and I just had to take a pause to figure out how do I say "man, you sucked" without letting him down. It almost feels like one of those power move type of things where maybe someone told him to ask that and he'd get the job. He didn't. But not because he asked that question, and it's not like we wouldn't have hired him for asking either. He just wasn't good. So I said something along the lines of, "It's clear you're a great guy. I'm sure you'd be a good cultural fit here. You have a good understanding of things, but there are certainly some areas where you could learn more." On the flip side, I had a guy once ask, "What are the hours now? This is an office job. It's not like it's a shift job." I guess it's a fair question, but still not really the kind of question we want to hear. What made it worse is the follow-ups. After asking that, he then asked what if I wanted to work from home sometimes and is it every day, so it just ended up seeming like this guy didn't want to have to work. I don't blame him, but you're not supposed to come out and be so obvious about it. I've only sat in on interviews, but I feel that you shouldn't force a question just to fill the silence. If you had a question that we missed during the interview, by all means. If you don't have any questions but your head is swirling with information, say, "Not at this time." If you think everything is clear, say that everything has been covered. Working in a technical field, I like to ask technical questions. Only to people who would know. Do you run your own data center? What hypervisors are you using for virtualization? What type of storage technology? Plans to move to cloud infrastructure? What OSs and future upgrade plans are you working towards? How do you see my prospective role integrating with current and future projects, etc.? Ask this one for both big girl jobs I've gotten since graduating college. What is one challenge problem that you see me helping overcome? Should I be hired, or some variation of that? Gotten both so far. Ask about the day-to-day workings of the role. What skills you can work on to make you a better candidate. One trick I used to use was I would use the interview to mention skills or qualities that I have that would suit the role. When it came to this question, I would ask what are the qualities or skills that you would be looking for in an ideal candidate. If you've done the interview right so far, they should respond with something along the lines with someone with your skills, experience, qualities. Doing this at the wrap up of the interview leaves the interviewer with a single take-home message that you're the right candidate. What's your policy on dating coworkers? It was a coffee shop and he was a regular whom very obviously had a crush on an employee. Didn't hire. Not the best response, but my favorite response. Ask them for a brief summary of their time with their previous company. Favorite aspects, challenges, overall experience of working there. You'll be surprised how badly received it is. Shows that you are interested, but also that you still have a decision to make. Plus, people like talking about themselves. What's a typical day like? What is the office environment like? How long have some of the other employees been here? What do I like about working here? My interviews are typically casual conversation to find out if someone is going to be a good fit for the company. I like when they ask me questions to make sure we are a good fit for them too. I want someone who's going to stick around for 2-3 years or more if possible. Let's make sure this is going to be good for all of us. Is there any reason you see me not being suitable for this position? It's ballsy and gives you a chance to objection handle if they do have a concern. Not an employer, but still, I didn't know what they wanted me to ask at this point, as I figured asking about salary seemed rude, especially since I was already working for the company but with a different job title. After a pause, I asked some whether we're having fun. My manager thought it was hilarious. The boss interviewing me wasn't amused. Depends on the sort of place you're interviewing for, but when I was interviewed for my current job I asked the manager what are the rest of the team like? Are they young old? Is there a social atmosphere? Would you say people socialize outside of work? Are there any regular sources of conflicts between team members? It wasn't quite as coherent as this. I asked these questions during a back and forth discussion. He told me a while after I was hired that while it wasn't related to the job directly it made me seem like I was genuinely interested in how the team interact with each other and whether it was a social atmosphere, which to me is an important part of the job. I always ask one or two of these. What's your favorite worst thing about the company? What's the typical person here like, or what type person shouldn't have this position in this company? Why should I want the job in this company? Or something like that. Basically try to make them sell it to you. How do you get to be where you are and why did you do it? What would be the worst best day that a person in this position could have? Not an employer but did impress an interviewer with this question. Is there anything during my interview that concerns you and would disqualify me from being employed with your company? I once asked this during the do you have any questions part and was scheduled for a second interview right on the spot. This gives you a chance to explain anything and to explain how you either overcame an issue or can prove you are a candidate worth pursuing. That's easy. During the interview note a few things that you actually want to learn more about, and then ask the interviewers a couple personal questions. Ask a few follow-up questions and restate your understanding. There's no wrong answers, you just want to be engaged and it actually helps you get a better feel for the job. Generally one of the interviewers is someone whom I would be working with or under, so I like to ask them why they like working there. I also might ask a question about the company that shows I know something about them or the industry. The important thing about interviews is you have to remember you are judging them too. I learned the hard way that if you are at an interview and you get the feeling it's not going to be a good fit for you, don't take the job. Another will come along. Ask about work employment conditions. And just one question that shows you did your research and due diligence. More than that and it's a gamble. What is totally wrong is not asking anything. That's literally saying I don't give a frick depending on how quick or on how the interview developed. If a lot of information was already given by both sides and you genuinely have no questions to ask, just say, I had a couple of questions, but most of my doubts became clear during the interview process. What is something about your job day to day that I wouldn't expect? During the interview you should have already demonstrated you've done your research. This shows that you are earnestly interested. A computer repair company I applied to. How much of this job is simple cleaning and part replacements versus actually fun stuff like stripping apart components and repairing PCBs? I got the job. It's mostly overcharging for basic replacements. During the interview has there been anything that has given you reservations about hiring me? If they do give an answer you can clarify. If not you can close with a speech about why you're the ideal candidate. Ask the panel what we loved about working for the organization, what made us passionate working for the organization. Needless to say she got the job. It was a great question. I always ask if I walk through the halls of company and asked 3 employees what they like most about working here or the culture, what would they tell me? When I conducted interviews for my previous job, when we asked this question we were hoping for the candidate to ask questions on the culture, the projects we did, and their expected daily duties. We used this question to see if the candidate was genuinely interested in the position. This was in software engineering. I typically ask 3 questions in an interview when I get asked this question. What would I have done in 6 months that tells you I was a great hire? What do you like best about the company? If there was one thing you could change about the company, what would it be? The first makes them express what they are looking for. The last 2 give a good sense of the culture. To date I've used this in 4 interviews. Hired at 1, offers from 1, bad fit at another, and the last was a startup still figuring out what they want and conversations with them are ongoing. When I'm doing interviews I know in the first 10 minutes if I'm going to hire you. Just be on time. Don't bring friends. Dress for the job. Be honest. And sell yourself. And for frick's sake if I ask you to tell me about yourself, don't fricking say, well what do you want to know? If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.